Hello, my name's Emily, and today I will be talking with you about women's fashion in the Middle East and Western impact. So just a brief overview of what we'll be talking about today. We're going to start with SHUKR fashion. That's a Muslim women's fashion brand that we'll get into in a minute. The topic of the hijab, obviously, this will be a very brief overview as the topic of the hijab is very in-depth and it could be a video in itself, so we're just going to go over that briefly from what I had found. Modesty in other religions will be gone over briefly just to tie it into the topic of the hijab. The burkini, Nike performance hijab, and then we're going to finish it up with Western attempts at Muslim fashion. SHUKR Islamic clothing was designed by Sillwood. In the article that I had read, we basically talked about the ideas and thoughts and driving creative forces behind creating SHUKR. SHUKR was founded in the 2000s for stylish Islamic dresses and pants, just overall garments. SHUKR looks to adopt Islamic wear to Western standards of style and looks to change perceptions regarding oppression in dress of Muslim women by making the clothing contemporary and more fashion-forward. Dressing as a Muslim woman in the West is a little bit of a catch-22 because you don't want your faith to be judged by Westerners and you don't want to feel threatened by their judgments, but also you don't want to be disloyal to your own faith, to your own beliefs, and you don't want to change who you are solely because of the way you're looked at by other people. With SHUKR, the true driving force behind it is for Muslim women to be able to stay true to their faith while not sticking out to a Westerner. They want to seem as though they are almost a part of their faith, but a part of the culture as well, because they don't want to seem judged, which is a very valid reason to create such a clothing brand with such an amazing impact. The issue with many other Islamic clothing brands is that although they may choose to cover the whole body and only the hands and face could be seen, some of them will represent tight clothing, which isn't what modesty for Muslim women is about. As you can see in the picture of the purple outfit, there's a loose set of pants with a longer tunic top. The dress is very loose fitting, and towards the end of this presentation, you'll see a little bit of what I'm talking about in regards to Islamic clothing that doesn't really hold up the ideals of modesty that SHUKR talks about. SHUKR wants Muslims to be able to show Westerners through their dress that they have the option to be modest and that it's their choice that they're consciously making. So with SHUKR, not only are they trying to reach out to their Muslim female audience, which is their main audience, no doubt, but also just to show that general modesty is what they aim to complete with their clothing and that it's available to Christian and Jewish conservative women as well who want to remain in that modest look. The next topic that we're going to go over is the topic of the hijab. For this topic, I specifically read an article by a scholar who all of his information will be in the link in the description so that you can look further into what he wrote, his references to the Quran, but I'm just going to give a brief overview of kind of what he said in his perception of women wearing the hijab. Obviously, this is completely up to the woman who's wearing it. It's a personal choice, but here's what he had to say basically regarding the thought of women wearing hijabs in the West. Women in the West shouldn't have to necessarily wear a hijab in the scholar's eyes because it could potentially endanger them. And the purpose of a hijab is to protect a woman from harassment or intimidation by someone else, specifically men. But in the West, you have to worry about men and women kind of attacking you for your beliefs and how you choose to dress. Beliefs that a woman shouldn't wear a hijab is in regards to if it puts her in danger. If a woman is threatened, as said before, wearing the hijab is not the crucial key to maintaining her modesty. The Quran states that a woman can be immodest by showing off her physical beauty, but that doesn't specifically classify her hair as something that shows her physical beauty or makes her modest. Also, when the scholar had written his piece, he had talked about how a woman's zina was what made her immodest or not. So whether or not her hair was covered, it didn't really matter. It mattered if she was being modest or showing off her physical beauty or coming across as vain. Also, the scholar spoke about jilbab, which is used to protect, which is used to cover from the belly button or the navel to the knee, as the scholar had said. And this would be an indicator of a free woman versus an enslaved woman. Free women would be completely covered back when the writing was done. They'd be covered from head to toe, and that would be a status of their freedom, while enslaved women had their bodies more out, they were more exposed physically, and that made them a target for harassment because they were seen as a lower class and they were seen as harassable, which obviously no one is harassable, but that's how that was perceived. The hijab and other coverings became important for enslaved women as well because they could hide their class by covering up and avoiding harassment from others. The Quran emphasizes that women are under protection when they wear the hijab, and that's its main focus. But if women in the West are wearing the hijab and it's not providing them that protection and it's causing more of an issue and they feel safer without it, then the scholar believes that it's safe to take it off. Obviously, this is up to your personal interpretation. This is how somebody wants to express themselves or express their faith, religion, or culture. And if they choose to wear it, that is completely understandable as well. What this scholar has said is not the official, basically, law of wearing hijab. So next we're just going to talk about modesty in other religions, basically just to take the emphasis off of Muslim women covering their hair and it being seen as oppression or anything like that, because women in other religions do this as well. For example, Jewish and Christian religions. To look towards a source, we have 1 Corinthians 11:2-16. I believe that's how you read a verse like that or label a verse like that. And basically, after reading this verse, I realized that the key points of it were that women are asked to cover their hair during worship because a woman is from man and man is from God. And as woman is not directly from God, she is mortal and man is directly from God. Therefore, he has some sort of higher power, hierarchy in a way, and it's dishonoring if her hair is exposed and his isn't. That's basically how I interpreted what was being written. Women are just deemed as something of man, something regular, therefore they must cover up, while man does not have to because he is seen as taken from God. So modesty in other religions isn't something that is completely unknown. The Muslim woman isn't the only woman who is asked to cover her hair during worship or in general. Next, we have the burkini. So around 2004, the burkini was invented, and here we have 2 pictures of it. And it was basically Muslim girls' sportswear, swimwear, kind of a swim sportswear so that they could participate in water sports or go out swimming in the ocean in public. And it's basically meant to fulfill that Western style of a swimsuit, but also with the Muslim requirements of being fully covered. And as you can see, when we talked about SHUKR clothing, Muslim women aren't supposed to wear leggings or anything that's tight to the body, but in this case, we can kind of see that that's different for the burkini. But the creator of the burkini in the article that I read, which will also be in the description, talked about how the burkini does not have Islamic roots. It's basically just a piece of clothing that represents modesty, and she'd like it to have outreach to Christian, Jewish, any modest religious groups as well, similar to Christian and Jewish head coverings. But with this, it was seen as something that didn't show oppression, but instead showed a sort of freedom because now these girls who are Muslim can stay true to their faith, can participate in these activities, and it basically was something that allowed them to enter another sphere of life in the West, such as sports, such as just being out there doing something active because they have this ability now with this new piece of fashion. Here we have the Nike Performance Hijab, which is something that's actually fairly new that we've seen come about. Basically, Nike is a Western company, and it's working to make hijab-wearing women included in sports conversation in the field of sports by creating this garment that they had worn before, but now it has better technology, better fabric built into it, and also covers all the modesty requirements. This really puts Muslim girls into the conversation of sports and creates a normalcy to them being in this space, being in this field, which is amazing because now they can fully compete without any type of hindrance, such as a specific cloth that would typically get sweaty or be more likely to move. This hijab is something that's really game-changing for their athletic lives. Normalizing cultural choices in clothing and sports is also important and a great foot that Nike stepped forward. Although Nike wasn't the first company to create performance hijabs, there had been many other small companies creating them as well, but they didn't have the global outreach or the reputation that Nike had, which kind of allowed them to fizzle out or not reach the audience that they needed to. But with Nike creating this performance hijab, which is definitely long overdue, Muslim female athletes finally have the ability to fully compete to their full capacity, which is amazing and really puts them in the conversation of sports. Here we just have a couple images of female athletes. It's actually the same female athlete in most of them in hijab, performing, competing. We see one boxing, we see a woman running, a woman fencing, and other sports that I personally am not a sports person, so I don't know what these would be. These sports, probably ice skating or something of that sort, or some sort of dancing or boxing or something like that. But either way, it's amazing to see that these women now have the opportunity to compete to their full capacity. So here we have a quick little comic, and it's by the artist Yes, I'm Hot in This. On Facebook, she does a lot of comics about life as a Muslim woman in the West, and she has this character, Susan, who is kind of clueless to how Huda is the artist, so I'm just assuming that this character is of herself, how Huda feels about certain things. And here we have Huda basically just trying to try something on in a dressing room and being misunderstood. So you could just take a moment to read this article or to look over this comic. Western attempts at Muslim fashion have basically been to include Muslim women in the high fashion, fashion forward conversation. But the question is, are they doing it correctly? And with brands like SHUKR, they definitely are. But when we see brands like Dolce & Gabbana, that's a brand that has definitely missed the mark. I'm going to just basically go over quickly what Dolce & Gabbana had done with their Muslim women's fashion line. So we're photos, and basically they do not adhere to the standards of modesty, having sheer fabrics, having laces, having lace fabrics, having leggings, and basically just doing everything that they should not be doing. Well, it was great that they made the effort. They needed to do it in a way that wouldn't be seen as cultural appropriation or as inappropriate. We can compare those outfits to the outfits of SHUKR, which are genuinely looking to incorporate that element of modesty and genuinely appeal to Muslim women, unlike Dolce & Gabbana, which were westernizing and appropriating Muslim women's fashion. To quickly conclude, fashion is working to be more inclusive towards Muslim women. We see that with brands like SHUKR, the burkini, Nike Performance Hijab, but also there are some downfalls as we see with Dolce & Gabbana. Hijabs in the West are basically the woman's choice of what she prefers to wear, what she doesn't want to do, but with that scholar's article, we did see that people do understand the need or the desire more so to choose not to wear the hijab. But we also see that it's not only Muslim women covering their heads, but women in other religions as well. So thank you so much for listening, and if you want to do some additional reading or look more on those sources that I had talked about and referenced, I have them in the link in the description below, and that's where the bibliography is, so you can continue learning about this topic because it really is an interesting topic and there is so much to go over. Also, I just want to note that the information that I got was from these articles. I am not an expert by any means, so when I talk about these things, I paraphrase and look towards these articles and take the information that I know from them. Thank you so much, and again, I appreciate you coming to listen to this.